San Francisco wide receiver Deebo Samuel has officially been traded to the Washington Commanders. A move in trading Deebo Samuel that's been highly predicted and pretty much almost guaranteed that it was going to happen from San Francisco's point of view. I think it's a bit surprising to see that the trade partner was Washington. But, Washington was a team. They have a lot of cap space this year. And from their perspective, you trade a 5th-round pick for a guy who has been productive in his career. That's a pretty good trade. The only negative I would bring up is Deebo Samuel. This is a guy that we have not seen play a full 17-game season in his career. In fact, we've barely seen him, play. We just don't see him play every game every year because he does take a lot of hits. And I think he does go to a team now where there's a lot of other guys that can take the ball. You have Jaden Daniels. You have the 2 running backs between Brian Robinson and Terry McLaurin. You have now Deebo Samuel. You have 4 or 5 guys, depending on what they do for the rest of free agency and in the draft, to kind of put a full group out there. I think last year when Washington had to rely on guys like De'Ami Brown, or if they had to rely on guys like Olamide Zaccheaus, they weren't having as much success in the regular season from an offensive standpoint. They still were one of the best groups on the offensive side of the ball in total. But I think when you do look at how to improve, getting, if Deebo Samuel is your 2nd or 3rd receiver, you're going to be doing pretty well for yourself. I think the most exciting part about this, if you're a Washington Commanders fan, is this proves that the Washington brass there in Maryland, they are willing to do whatever it takes to continually improve this team. Yes, Deebo Samuel is not the blockbuster player that he was in 2021, but he still is a very productive player. He's proven that when he gets the ball in his hands, he can make things happen. Whether it's running the ball or catching it, he's just going to produce, and he's going to have an ability, especially in the run game, whether it's blocking or actually running the ball, he has an ability to positively impact his offense. And with as much money as Washington has in free agency in their cap space, it really should come as no surprise that they were one of the teams making a trade for a big name, big salary cap player like a Deebo Samuel. They still are left with about $60+ million worth of cap space, so they can fill out the rest of their team. They're going to need a tight end. They're going to need some improvements on the defense, but they still have the money to do that. And all they did was trade a 5th-round pick for a guy that they know can produce. For the 49ers, however, you look at this as a trade to kind of, put yourself ahead in 2026 and 2027 in terms of where your cap is set up. Deebo Samuel wasn't at the top of his abilities last year, and he really hasn't had a great year since 2021. Ever since then, he hasn't even gone over 900 yards receiving. He's always going to be a touchdown threat, but he just doesn't have the recent history of producing at an elite level like he did in 2021. So this frees up some cap for your team. You don't have Deebo Samuel on your roster anymore, which is a bit of a void. He was a productive player. The same good reason why Washington would want him is a bad reason for San Francisco not to have him. He is a productive player. So this leaves an obvious hole at receiver. There's already all the rumors about trading Brandon Ayuk. And if that happens, you're left with Ricky Pearsall. So you need another guy for the future. And I think this opens up that possibility that we see somebody like a Luther Burden or a Emeka Egbuka or even Matthew Golden, who had an incredible 40-yard dash and combine performance today. You see a pretty easy path to not only flesh out that skill group, but you have a lot of money now that you're eventually going to have to give to Brock Purdy. But this gives you the ability to actually do that. You no longer have Deebo on your roster. You're no longer going to have the kind of other overbearing weight on your shoulders of whether or not you pay Deebo Samuel. Now that responsibility is on someone else. Overall, this is a pretty win-win trade, if you ask me. Washington gives up a fifth-round pick for a guy who has proven production in the NFL, and San Francisco clears a little bit of money off of their books. They can add a receiver in the draft with the number 11 pick, and they get some money for the future to give to Brock Purdy. The only thing is, in the short term, how does it affect the San Francisco 49ers from their, I guess, team personality and how they kind of operate day-to-day business? Because, he was a major part of that. But I think if you replace Deebo Samuel with someone you feel comfortable can actually replace him, I think you end up pretty happy with what you did. Yes, a fifth-round pick is not crazy, but we've seen guys go for fourth, fifth-round picks that are way better than Deebo Samuel, way more in their prime or have more productive years in the past 2 or 3 seasons. So a fifth-round pick for Deebo Samuel, while it might not seem like a lot, it's kind of the going value for an aging, not as productive as you want receiver. So I think it's a win for San Francisco on that part.